right, good morning, everybody. Real quick, let me talk about what's going on the rest of this week. Today we're talking about taking action. We'll take a look at the things you need to do in terms of, okay, you've decided to jump in, now what should I do? What are the first things I should do? At the end of class today, I'll be distributing your student kits. I'll give you the kit, which is sealed in a plastic bag. I'll give you a face guard, and I'll give you a plastic bag to put it in. Because once you take it out of this sealed plastic bag, it won't stay in there. I mean, it would go back in there, but you might lose the stuff. And we want to avoid that. I look at that student kit as if it were your book for my class. Quit grabbing me. As if it were your book for my class, and you keep it in there this first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, when we move into first aid stuff, then you won't need it, so you can do what you want with it after that. Okay? Tomorrow we'll talk about what do we do before we give care. Okay? And tomorrow we'll be testing out of the glove test, which is kind of cool. I actually have fake blood that you'll use. And I teach you how to take the gloves off without touching your skin. I put some fake blood in here, and you dip your fingertips in here, and you have to remove your gloves. Okay? As if it were a real life situation. If I see blood on the hands, and it's not too bad, we move on. But it really should be none at all there. Okay? It really should be none at all there. So that's what's going to happen along with the instruction tomorrow. Any questions about that? Great. Here's your reminders. Your fee is due on the 16th. Remember, if you're planning on paying your fee, please, please, please get that thing in as soon as you can. Because we'll get to the 16th, you will want to pay it, and they'll go and be like, oh, Meredith, I forgot my fee. And I'll be like, too bad. Too bad. Okay. And remember that current events start next week. The first one is due next Friday. It's people who are in the blue group, and the blue group consists of Dyra, Lorenzo, Hassan, David. Okay? Those are my blue group. And I know Dyra's not here, but it is what it is. Any questions about the nuts and bolts for today? All right, so today, here's what we're going to learn in terms of our objective. Identify and describe emergency action steps. There are 3 of them, and they all start with the letter C. We're going to look at conditions to consider life-threatening. And we're going to be able to explain what you should do in terms of contacting 911. Okay? Any questions about any of that? All right, so before we get into actually taking action, let's just run through what our little pre-assessment was. If you know an answer, you think you know an answer, fine. If you don't, that's also fine. It's a pre-assessment. It tells me what you know and what you need to be taught. The first one says, if you find somebody unconscious, what would you do? Explain in detail. So what do you think you do? Dylan, what do you think you do?
You put your ears close to you check their natural pulse, and then you put your ear close to their mouth at the same time and watch your chest and breathe.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's actually pretty good. He's real close. Okay, he's real close. That's good. How do you know when to contact the EMTs for help? What's the general rule of thumb I talked about 55,000 times yesterday? Does anybody remember the rule of thumb when you call 911? When you should call 911?
If you're not sure, you should call it.
If you're not sure, just call. Absolutely. Don't hesitate. Okay? Don't hesitate. Does anybody know what CPR stands for? Go ahead, Alex.
Cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
Yeah, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Absolutely. How do you know when to give CPR? What type of condition? Go ahead, Dylan.
When is their pulse?
There's no pulse. There's no heartbeat. Nothing. That's when you know, hey, I got to kick in the CPR here. When do you stop giving CPR? When they start breathing is one of the answers, absolutely. Go ahead. when the EMTs arrive, because they're professionals and they have better equipment than you potentially are providing? Any other reasoning? Go ahead. When you're exhausted. When you're exhausted, you can't go on. Exactly. Anything else? Okay. Well, I gave them to you yesterday. We'll revisit them a few thousand times. What is an AED? Hassan, do you know what an AED is? You don't have to tell me what AED means, but do you know what it is? Okay. Dylan?
It's a defibrillator with two sticky patches.
Right, exactly. It's a defibrillator. It's a defibrillator. And to answer the next question, it stands for automated external defibrillator. When our heart is beating, it's called defibrillation. You know, if you look at a echogram or whatever the heck they're called, I can't remember the name, the heartbeat goes up and it goes down. A normal heartbeat. It's called defibrillation. Okay? When it flatlines, you have no defibrillation. And we use that AED to try and shock that erratic electrical current, because your heart functions on electrical current, try and shock it back into normal beating. Anybody know what RICE stands for? And Dylan is done answering all my questions. Go ahead, Alex.
Rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Rest, ice, compression, elevation, yeah. The American Red Cross has a little bit of a different take on it, but you're very much on point there. When would we use the RICE formula? What might be a situation that would occur for us to, go ahead, Logan.
A sprain.
A sprain, exactly. You're outside, you're playing soccer, or you're running, you know, whatever, and you sprain your ankle. You got to get it up in the air and throw some ice on it. Okay? When would be a good time to move somebody? Give me one example.
Like when you know that they didn't like injure their neck or their head or their back or anything.
Okay, that would be something that is part of the formula for being able to move them. Okay, but go ahead. Outstanding. Yep. Yep. So we know, because even in that situation there,
At least they did.
yeah, we would probably move them if there was a fire or something that was detrimental. You saw that video we watched yesterday. I probably, would have jumped in. I don't know 100%, but I probably would have jumped in, and we probably would have needed to move that guy. No question about it. Does anybody know the stages of heat illness? Or how about this? Does anybody know when the stages of heat illness begin? What has to occur for heat illness to begin?
Dehydration.
Dehydration, exactly. Does anybody know what heat illness ends in? Well, yeah, that is definitely, what'd you say?
Is heat exhaustion worse? Or
Heat exhaustion is part of it, but heat stroke is the end all, okay? So you're gonna learn the stages of heat illness. And this is a pretty simple one. I'm gonna even go to Ivan on this. How do you remove a splinter?
don't you like find a piece of wood and
Take a piece of wood out, yeah, but what would you use?
I don't know what to call it, it's like that.
Tweezers?
Tweezers,
Yeah, yeah. What's real important to remember when you're using tweezers and you're removing a splinter is to make sure they're sterilized, whether you put some alcohol at the end of it, or if you take a match or something and hold it over the end just for a few seconds to burn off any bacteria. That's real important to make sure you account for, okay? Also, like if you have a splinter or a stinger from a bee or something, you can take a credit card and swipe in the direction it went in and get it out. And that's something we're going to learn down the road, okay? So we did the pre-assessment just so you guys have an idea of what we have coming up in the not-so-distant future. If you want to turn in your packet to page 4, today I told you we're talking about taking action. My little video is about somebody taking action when they encounter an accident.
Один? Один. Рука болит? Давай, помочь. Сильно?
Thankfully, it wasn't a serious situation that occurred there, and those people were like, well, let's go check it out. And they did so. This next video, pay special close attention to the way it's approached by the young lady you see in the green top and her friend that's beside her, kneeling beside her. Listen to my favorite part that's in this video. This guy who's in the video, he makes a comment, it's just absurd. And we're going to talk about some things that she did right and some things that really weren't necessary that she did. Okay?
Somebody's not happy with lunch.
Nah, he should have gone to the Shake Shack.
Get that email from Natalie?
What about the cats?
What was that?
Do you think he needs help?
You know, no. It's probably nothing.
I don't know, Steve. He might have a serious medical problem.
Nina, it's not our problem.
I'm going to check it out.
Nina, don't.
Sir,
I hope you know what you're doing. You might get sued. You realize that?
is everything okay here? Something's wrong with this man. I'll get a first aid kit and call security. Security?
That guy must be drunk.
I'm Nina. I have training in first aid. Is it okay if I help you? Can you tell me what happened? Can you tell me your name? Sir? He has diabetes. We need to get him help right away.
Can you tell me what happened here?
He suddenly fell over. His medical ID says that he has diabetes. I think he needs help.
Okay, I'll call 911. Security officer want to call.
Okay. What would ever lead somebody to believe that that guy was drunk? Sitting in some sort of cafeteria, okay? That cracks me up every time I see it. But, you know, some things that she did right. First, she decided to take the initiative, like we talked about yesterday. All right? She didn't let her friend necessarily talk her out of it. She got some help. I think, personally, and I'm sure you guys might see it this way too, you didn't necessarily need to have security come and tell you anything. The lady said, I'll get the emergency kit. The lady should have had somebody go ahead and call 911 at the same time. If you want to notify security so that they're aware of emergency help coming, great. But I see absolutely zero reason in her letting security know, hey, look, we've got this situation going on. I have no clue. The other thing was she was extremely and utterly observant about the guy. And that's something you're going to learn how to do. You're going to learn how to check somebody. She noticed he had a bracelet on and that he was diabetic. Remember the story I told you about the lady that I ran into at the grocery store by my house? I shared that story with you guys. Okay? I didn't know what her deal was. I didn't get to check her out because they refused help from me. but obviously she had a medical condition. She might have been wearing some sort of medical bracelet or necklace. I had a girl a few years ago who actually had diabetes. And she had diabetes 1, which means essentially you're caring for that the rest of your life. And she had it tattooed on her wrist, a little diabetic bracelet, so that if the EMTs had to come and help her, they would know she's diabetic. You know, that's fine. You don't have to do that. But that's a pretty good teaching video to start things off. I'm impressed that they were able to have her play that out so well with checking for all those different things and fighting a barrier at the same time. He actually gave her quite a few barriers. He said, hey, you might get sued. Can she really get sued? Did she do anything that would get her sued? No, not at all. All right, so the first, or maybe it's the second question in your packet on page 4, it says, name and describe the emergency action steps. Well, there are 3 of them. Check, call, and care. First thing you need to do is check the scene for safety and the person for life-threatening conditions. You absolutely, positively, under no uncertain circumstances, need to put yourself at risk in helping somebody if you could do damage to yourself. If there's downed electrical wires and there's a person that's being touched by those wires, or those wires are too close for you to get to them, guess what? Call 911. Call 911. If you decided that you didn't want to jump in on that situation yesterday, in that automobile and motorcycle accident, that's okay. There's fire going on there. You don't want to risk it. You looked at the scene and you're like, yeah, I'd love to help that guy, but I ain't blowing up. And that's okay. All right, so that's first and foremost. The second piece is calling 911. And I said this about 1 billion times yesterday. If all else fails, it's still helping somebody if you call 911. And then the third piece is care for the person for the conditions you find. I don't remember if it was in this class or my 8th period class, but you may encounter conditions that you can't really do a whole lot about. You can't really help somebody who has internal bleeding. There's not a lot you can do. You can't help somebody who's going into shock. There's no medical cure. We can't give them anything miraculous. What we can do is we can keep them comforted. All right, make sure that they're comfortable. If they have on a shirt and it's all buttoned up and everything, you might want to loosen a couple buttons. If they're sitting up and they're not feeling well, have them lie back down. You want to talk to them in a comforting way. Think about when you were a little kid and you got sick. Your parent or your guardian talked to you in a comforting way so you were relaxed. And that's what you want to do oftentimes. That can be care for somebody. And then obviously you have the extreme where you're in full-blown CPR and using an AED and, you know. Okay. So you don't have to write a thing here, guys. As you check the scene, think to yourself, is it safe? Is there immediate danger? What happened here? Are there more people involved in this? Can anybody give me a hand that's around here? Sometimes those questions will be easy to answer. Other times, there may be no answer. And when you check the person, try and figure out exactly what went wrong with them, especially if they're unconscious. You know, you check them, they're unconscious, you call 911, they're not going to roll over and tell you what happened to them and then roll back over and be unconscious. It's not that simple. So you've got to kind of deduce what's going on there. You need to pull 5 off of this slide. When to call. General rules to call. Most of these are common sense. Somebody who's going in and out with unconsciousness. Breathing issues. Chest pain, discomfort or pressure. Their stomach hurting extremely, extremely bad. Severe external or internal bleeding. Vomiting or passing blood. Severe burns, suspected poisoning, seizures. Now sometimes you encounter somebody who has a seizure, and if they're with somebody else, you may not need to call 911. That person they're with can tell you, oh, they get these seizures periodically. I know what to do to help them. Then you could just be a support for them. Other times, you know, it may be the first time it ever happened. When we get down the road, I'm going to tell you kind of a sad seizure story about a kid who played football for me at Rockville. We were in in spring workouts and what happened to him with a medicine ball. Anyway, a stroke, absolutely recalling. Signs of head, neck, or spine injury. Painful or swollen, deformed areas with an open fracture. An open fracture means you broke a bone and the bone came through your skin. A fire or explosion, downed electrical wires, water moving swiftly. Anybody see the video of what happened in Glen Burnie a few weeks back when there was really bad flooding? All of a sudden they had flash flooding, and there was a young lady and she was driving in her car down the main street in downtown Glen Burnie, and the water was gushing against her car, and they knew that the water was going to take her car. It was coming so rapid and there was so much of it. But they formed this human chain out of this store that she was right in front of, and they got her out of the car. And it's just like you see in a movie. Just as they got her out of the car and got her to safety, her car started tumbling down the road with the water. You know, it's pretty intense. And then there's another story. I read this a couple of years ago, and this is a really bad, sad story to me. This young lady was graduating from a high school in Texas, and she was on her way home from graduation practice in the evening, and they had really bad rain and flooding, and she was in her car, and all this water is coming by her car, and she's on the phone with her dad, and she's like, "Dad, what do I do? What do I do?" The water's rushing the car, and she no sooner had this conversation with him, and she was swept away in the water and killed. It was like the night before she graduated. It was the saddest story, I'll tell you. You know, serious motor vehicle collision, somebody who's injured can't move. Those are all general rules of when to call. Okay. These things right here, these are call first or care first situations for somebody who's by themselves. These are important to know. These will show up on the exam, and I most likely will quiz you on these. That's how important I think these are. Call first situations. Somebody who appears to be 12 years old or older, an older child up to an adult, you find unconscious, you call 911. If somebody sees a young child or an infant collapse, you call 911. And if somebody knows that a child or an infant has a heart condition, cardiac arrest, or a cardiac problem, you call 911. When you care for somebody first, you care for them if it's a young person, a young child, or an infant that nobody saw collapse or anything. Or it's a drowning victim. So you've got 3 call first and 2 care first situations. The call first situations, guys, are all cardiac related. So we want to get emergency help there ASAP, and we want to get started after we get the emergency help on their way there. The second one, they have a little bit more of a chance right away. That's why we care first, because they're breathing emergencies. They're related to respiratory issues. Again, these 5 things right here, 3 call first, 2 care first, are integral in you knowing and being able to apply. Now, in today's world, every one of you probably has a cell phone. Am I correct? Everybody have a cell phone in here? Right? So you probably, most likely, can hit 911 and start giving care to somebody. But if you don't have that phone available to you for whatever reason, these are rules of thumb in terms of what you need to follow. All right? You good, Debrashmi? I know these are a little lengthy in nature, but they are super important. just a gentle reminder that your notes are giving credit to, you get points for your notes, so do a nice job with them. You can take that out of here. That doesn't water. Trust me. Anybody need more time? Okay. We are scaffolding right now, guys. I'm leading you up to the first piece of it, which is CPR, adult CPR. So you got to know when you have to give that CPR. You good? Oh, great. All right. So when you're caring, you don't need anything off of here, but you want to care for life-threatening conditions first. If there's more than one person, you have to evaluate who needs your help the most if there's only you there. If there's more than you there, you can take care of the person who needs the help the most, since you're going to be certified to be able to do that, or at least have a lot of working knowledge on how to do it. And whoever's there with you can help the other person. You can give them some direction at the same time. While you're waiting for advanced help, essentially you want to care for those conditions, monitor them, and keep them comforted as you see fit. Okay? Don't do anything you don't know how to do. And that's the big thing I need to stress with you guys. And the last thing I want to cover today, and this is at the bottom of your note sheet, transporting the person. When should you never transport them? If they have an injury that will be aggravated by you transporting them, somebody blows their knee out, even though most likely you can put somebody in the car and take them to a hospital or a clinic if they have an injured knee. If it hurts to even move this person, you don't take them. The person has or might develop a life-threatening condition. Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Leave them, call 911. The worst thing that can happen is you're driving them down the road to Shady Grove or over to the that's Holy Cross over there off of 118, right? Yeah, you're driving them over there and you're still a ways away and they go into cardiac arrest. They go from heart attack or heart attack signs to cardiac arrest. Then you've got to pull your vehicle over, drag them out of the car, call 911, start doing CPR. You know you're not going to have an AED available. And the last one is, if you don't know the nature of that injury or illness, make the call. But don't take them yourself. Okay? If you are going to take somebody because the situation dictates you can do that, try and get someone to go with you, just in case their condition changes. And the last thing up there, please, 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 don't let somebody drive themselves to a hospital or a care facility who says, I'm having some signs of a heart attack, I've had one before, I'll get there before anything happens, it's cool, I'm going to go. No. No. Can you imagine somebody driving down the road, you know, I don't know, I got this pain in my arm, I'm okay though, I know how to get there, I'm going to be there. And all of a sudden they go into cardiac arrest. So they're going to crash, they might die, and they might take out some other people along the way. So no, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we get them the transportation that they need and the care that they need. Any questions about any of that? Anything I covered?